Today, I'd like to introduce you to Jennifer Eubank of Archipelago Quilting. I met Jennifer through the Island Boutique Ambassador Program, and I had such a fun time learning all about her quilting journey. Grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and enjoy our chat. Tell me about how you got started quilting and that first project you made.
So I always say, oh, like 20 years ago, it's got to be like 27 or 30 years now. But I had a friend from high school and college who got pregnant and was having a really hard time holding on to that baby. And they put her in the hospital for, I want to think it was like 3 or 5 months. I mean, it was a long time in the hospital. And there was a book called On the Day You Were Born, and it had a spinning world and like little guys dancing throughout it. So I was like, well, I'm just going to make a quilt. Like, how hard can it be? And I had a friend who had just retired, and she was a quilter. And I asked her a couple questions and bought a bunch of fabric. And so for my first project, I did this applique thing. And it turned out, but I was like, let's see, what's the hardest thing to do? And so that's what I did. And it was a spinning world and little people dancing all around it in the borders. And it was really a lot of fun. I would never want to replicate that ever.
Sure. It's better to jump in when you don't know what's in store sometimes.
Yeah. And then from there, I've just done everything to get better at things.
Sure.
So I'll try anything once, and if I like it, twice, and if I really like it, then I need to move on to something else and try a different technique. I try and do things 2 times, and then after 2 times, something's got to change about it.
Okay.
So like my elephants, I have 4 elephants. I've only followed the directions 1 time on one of them. And the other ones I do different than the directions. So
that sounds fantastic, though, a way to keep things fresh and interesting.
And just increase skills. I think that's a lot of what we want to do, is just increase our skills.
Sure. So did you have someone helping you with that first quilt, or did you just dive in as kind of a self-taught?
I just kind of dove in. I at one point went to the local guild here in Kodiak and was trying to figure out how to put the 3 layers together. And I was asking people and nobody would really tell me. And finally somebody went, what you need to do. And she explained it to me, and I thought, well, I'm done with this organization. And, it took a long time for me to go back.
It's an unfortunate common occurrence that negative attitude somehow creeps out and can really turn people off. So hopefully I create a more welcoming space in my quilting world. But yeah, I am sad for those people that
hear that
get turned away, because you're just trying. Everybody's learning. Not everybody knows how to do things. So
what the secrets are. Yeah. And it was great because that really pushed me into doing classes and teaching people, because I'm not the okay. I'm like, what? All right, let's try it. What's going to happen if we do this kind of a deal? Or, now that I've done a lot of retreats and worked for a quilter, and the more I get into it, the more I do it, the more I'm like, oh, I want to be able to tell people, you might want to try this, because it could work for you, and it might be something that saves you time or effort or pain later.
Yeah. So. And I always try to share my techniques as, this is how I do it. There are tons of different ways to do things, and this is what the method I like, but you can try it or not. Or tell us about your current quilt project. What are you working on today?
Well, I'm testing a pattern for a person on the Instagram.
Mm-hmm. Wow, very pretty
So,
stars.
yeah. Well, and I'm like, gosh, this is taking a long time. Usually my quilts are pretty, but so that's good because they're not paper pieced, which I like to think that I'm fairly good at paper piecing and it goes pretty quick. So this has been really nice to do some traditional piecing. I also have a pile of quilts that I was trying to get done over the holiday. One of my really good friends, Cindy McCracken, is a quilt designer out of Kalispell, Montana, and she sends me packages of fabric with some information, and I do her samples for her.
Oh, okay.
So out of the 4 quilts that she sent, I've got 2 of them done this week, and her quilt patterns are pretty fun and easy, and I just love zipping on through them. So that's a couple of the things I've been working on this week. How about you? What are you working on?
A baby quilt that I have a very good friend who has lots of friends who are getting pregnant. So she always calls me up and say, hey, I need another baby quilt.
Oh, nice.
So she just gives me the general color scheme and maybe an idea about like last fall, she wanted hot air balloons and this time it was owls. And so.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. Those are the best. Like a bunch of the babies that I made baby quilts for are now starting to get graduation quilts.
Oh yeah.
But like all of a sudden those that have graduated and gone on are now having babies. So it's either the graduation season or the baby season. So I totally get that. That's pretty nice.
So that's fun. So you are talking about doing samples for other people. So that's a nice way to keep the quilts that are in your house to a manageable level. Do you typically quilt for yourself or are you giving things away?
I do a lot of giving away, actually. My mom used to live at the care center here, and anytime that I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, I pull out fabric and I make a donation quilt for the elders at the elder care house. I have gotten crazy the past few years making, 4 or 5 or 6, or last year 7 quilts for graduates. And some of them are just like, oh, I love his mom. He gets one, kind of deal. So, it's hard for me. How many quilts do I need?
Right.
I only need a couple. I only want a couple. And the rest I'm like, oh, I should make that for this person, or my nieces have a bunch of babies and I make them for those guys, or, it's hard to keep them. I get them done and I think, okay, I'm done with that. Who does it belong to? And then something will happen. I'll go, oh, that belongs to so-and-so. And I'll send it off,
That's neat. Yeah. The quilts really do have a way of speaking to you and matching up with that perfect person. So
do you give away a lot of yours?
Not really, unfortunately, because I do a lot of pattern design and then I teach from my quilts. So I tend to keep them on hand. So I have my samples and so the shops can display them. How do you manage your stash? Do you have tons of fabric hoarded away, or are you able to limit yourself to what you can actually use?
No. So I live in a super tiny house, and I have a lot of fabric. The one that I'm working on right now, Kate Spain put Calypso out probably 3 or 4 years ago, and I had 2 of her fat quarter bundles of it, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna use one.
Just one.
It doesn't matter that I have a fat quarter bundle of her latitude and a half yard bundle of her longitude fabrics. Like I am a little bit hoardish about that. And but that doesn't mean that I wouldn't be like, all right, let's pull this out and use 5 yards of this. I've tried to not do as much shopping online as I have in the past. And really, a couple of years ago, I worked for a quilter in Montana. And through working for her and being a certified instructor for her, I bought a lot of fabric.
Mm-hmm.
So when I had retired and moved down, worked for her for a little bit, and then retired from retirement and came back to work, I brought a lot of fabric with me. And I'm like, oh, I'll be good for a while.
Sure.
So what's your strategy for buying that? Do you, like when you find a piece of fabric and you're like, oh, I need this, but I don't know what it's for. Like how many yards do you normally buy?
I'll use the 3-yard rule, because I figure having 3 yards, you would have enough to do borders. You could use it on the back. You could chop it up and use it in a bunch of blocks. That's kind of a good size. If it's just something that's, cute and struck my fancy, I'm happy to just have a fat quarter and use a little bit, because I like to do really scrappy stuff. So not having a ton of one fabric is fine with. So I have a couple questions about things that can get a little bit controversial. People have strong opinions. Do you pre-wash all your fabric?
I don't. Mostly use batiks. Very rarely do I find that they run. And color catchers are my friend. Yeah. And so when I give quilts, I tell people about them, or I give them color catchers to throw in the wash with them. I haven't done a lot of, until recently, I haven't done a lot of really light background, so I don't really worry about a lot of that.
The second controversial question, not necessarily controversial, but just people have strong opinions. Do you do hand binding or machine binding?
Oh, I'm a hand binder. I only recently have kind of tried out the machine binding, and I'll do that for the quilts that are a little bit more industrial, like the ones that go to the care center, especially since I want to get them done and get them to people. They've already been there for a while, but there's just something nice about hand quilting. I also have cats. And so when I start to quilt something, everybody's got to be in my lap. So it's really nice. And if you happen to fall asleep while you're hand binding, like, it's really kind of nice to fall asleep under a quilt, Yeah. It's a nice way to kind of finish it.
Yes.
Decided that this year I was going to teach myself how to knit. So I bought a bunch of things for myself for Christmas to be like, because I saw a stocking that was, there is just no way that a beginner would be like, oh, I'm making a Christmas stocking with dinosaur bones on it. But it was like the coolest stocking. And why don't you just try pot holders to start? So I got all the stuff. I just haven't gotten to the part where I'm looking it up online to figure it out.
Right. Well, my husband taught himself to knit from YouTube videos. So just jump, and with your track record of jumping into challenging projects, you'll be fine.
Thanks. All right, I'll give it a try.
Yep. Yeah. How would you describe your quilting style? This goes for anybody, because I was going to say if you were designing your own quilt, but you don't have to be a designer to have a style. You will tend to gravitate towards certain things, or be totally eclectic and random. That's okay too.
I'll do a little bit of everything. I really love paper piecing because of the accuracy, and I think I'm good at it. And I've taught a lot of quilt classes. I worked for Judy Niemeyer for a couple years, and several summers before that. And so I think I'm fast and accurate and love to do that. But I also will do traditional piecing. This quilt that I'm working on right now, like I said, it's traditional pieced, and I haven't done that in a long time. And I love it. I'm not really, I'm still learning about modern quilts or improv quilts. So my girls and my sew sisters and I decided we were going to do a challenge. And so we're going to do, now it's 12 quilts in 24 months. It started out as 10 quilts in 12 months, but and we had to pick a bunch of things, but there were a couple things like improv. We all had to do an improv. We all had to do it. We all had to enter a quilt in a show. We all had to, what was the other one? Improv, quilt in a show. Oh, a start to finish. Like there was 4 things that you had to do, and then the rest you could just pick from. Yeah. And so that is like just a nice way to kind of challenge ourselves, but it's like getting done with your oldest UFO. My oldest UFO is New York Beauties, but like I said, I'm not great at improv or modern stuff, but I want to know more. And so I'm taking a class actually from Carol Lyle Shaw online, and I just do stuff like that. Like I don't have any pride or any shame when it comes to quilting. Like, oh, if I don't know how to do it, I want to figure it out. And if I do know how to do it and I want to make one of those for someone or something, or just to practice, then I'm going to do that.
That's awesome. That's a great philosophy to enter into anything, quilting or life or whatever. Just, no pride and no shame. You can just do it. In a different world, would you enjoy traveling to quilt? Are there any, quilt cruises or quilt destinations that you want to get out to when we're able to?
So when you live in Alaska, coming out of Alaska is not bad, but if you're going for something like classes, you don't want to be dragging your machine across the country. They're less kind anymore at the airport when you walk through and you've got a giant
mechanical thing with sharp.
It's not going to fit under the seat, lady.
Yeah.
So those are harder to do, but I do love. I love a road trip. There's been times when I've jumped in the car in Kalispell and I drove like hell all the way up to Whitehorse, which is in Yukon in Canada, and taking a retreat from my friend Janet Spinks, who has a retreat center up there, and met friends. Yeah.
What is the biggest quilt project that you've attempted? And you can define big however you want, if it was big in size or.
We go back to that care center. When they first opened, my mom was new there, and I went to the guild and said, you know what? They have 21 beds, and they're only going to put in 17 people to start. And this isn't a way for me to get my mom a quilt because she's got 3 on her bed. But can't we just invite people to be at home and have a new quilt on their bed? And the guild went along with it, which was pretty awesome. And I'm no longer part of that guild, but I continue to make quilts and give those to the individuals. And so when, I'll check with that friend who was a dietitian and now is a counselor, I'll check with her and see what colors people are asking for, and I'll make quilts for that. So I don't know if that was my biggest challenge, but definitely like one of the more meaningful for me.
And then the other end of the spectrum, what's the smallest quilt project that you've done? Do you work with tiny piecing or miniatures at all? Or is it just tiny? I'm looking at the feathered stars behind you. So you do some tiny.
So I actually have a 6-inch block that I did from those itty bitty, those packages, those itty bitty quilts. So yeah, I kind of got a little crazy this winter and made a bunch of stockings that were kind of fun to do. I'm not a big wall hanging kind of a person, but I've done a few wall hangings lately. I just, if I'm gonna do something, I just want to do it big. To do this baby quilt, I'm going to start to do, and then all of a sudden, it's bigger and bigger, and you've got a twin size bed quilt. Yeah, bigger's better for me.
What is the favorite quilt that you've ever made?
So I have quilts that people have made for me, but this one right here.
Oh yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, I did that in a class down in California, the Asilomar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then on my bed, so you're getting a whole tour. This
Ooh.
bullseye quilt. So those are the ones that I made that are my favorite. This is my new one that I did for, and everybody's sleeping.
Yeah.
I did
That's
for
a puff quilt, right?
yeah.
Oh,
Oh my gosh. That was really fun. That was lo and behold, Stitchery has a blog, and so that was my quilt for Island Batik, the challenge, the scrap challenge.
Uh-huh.
So right now, those are the three that I've made that I've kept. The bullseye quilt though is by Becky Goldsmith, and it is fantastically accurate and fun, and boy, just because of that, I've bought other patterns from her. The sizzle quilt that came out last year, maybe the year before, which was a block of the month for the quilt show. Oh my gosh, that is a great quilt. Like, but Becky Goldsmith does a really nice pattern.
Mm-hmm. What is your best advice for beginner quilters?
You know, besides do two things and move on, the three things that's going to make you a better quilter is that accurate cutting, that accurate quarter inch, and then just pressing.
Yeah.
Those are the three things that if you do nothing else, if you do the same pattern over and over again, your first quilt to the last one that you did is going to increase, but beautifully, if you just practice those three. And once you've mastered those three, then add the applique, add the paper piecing, add the everything, because it's going to be so much easier if you do that. And the idea that the mat and the ruler are a system, you know, you're cutting, that accuracy that you learn on how to, you know, make those cuts, it will save you days, it will save you tears, it will save you so much. It was really nice getting to talk to you. Just create, people, just work, you know, just create, just do whatever you want to do.
Well, your enthusiasm for quilting and for life in general really shines through. So it was a pleasure talking to you, Jennifer.
Oh my gosh. Thanks. This was fun.
You can see more of Jennifer's beautiful quilting on her blog. I'll link it in the description below. Do you need help cutting accurately or sewing an accurate quarter-inch seam? I'm working on some new tutorials. Look for a beginner quilt series coming soon. If there is a specific quilt block you'd like to see, please leave a comment below. Check out this next video to see why the 9 patch is such a great quilt block. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.